Hello and welcome to PGurus channel. I'm your host Sri Iyer. Today we go back to our geopolitical expert Abhijit Iyer-Mitra. Abhijit, welcome to PGurus channel.
Thanks for having me again, Shri.
That's a lovely backdrop you have. A Saturday morning, all the birds are out in full force, and they want to have a say in this debate too. And we welcome all of them. And I'm hoping that you will translate what they are saying to our viewers. But before we get jump into our topic of today, viewers, please help us reach the target of 100,000 subscribers. We are close to 50 now, and we would like to double our number. And we would love to bring more in-depth discussions, such as the one that we had recently with the journalist J. Gopikrishnan. Abhijit is another stellar example, and we would like to bring more, but we really need your help in getting more subscribers, because the more the subscribers are, the better I can sell PGurus as a viable channel for all the experts. Thank you very much for that. So Abhijit, it's been a couple of weeks since we talked. I just wanted your opinion on how you see things play out in the Iran-Saudi Arabia conflict. So I'll just, for the viewers' sake and establishing the context, I want to say some things. The oil fields were hit by drones and missiles, presumably from the west and north of Saudi Arabia. And Houthis, who are on the south of Saudi Arabia, have claimed responsibility. So there is some sort of a disconnect here. How could that be? So the logical thing would be that most likely these missiles and the drones came from either Iran or Iraq, which are to the north. What are your thoughts on this, Abhijit? Because we want to first find out who really sent it at Saudi Arabia.
Look, I'll be very honest with you. The technology threshold for drones and cruise missiles has gone down so much that anybody can use it these days. That said, we should also be careful that cruise missiles are something. The production of cruise missiles, unlike the rockets that Hamas uses, which can be built in your garage, in a garage factory, cruise missiles aren't like that. Especially precision cruise missiles require an extraordinary amount of engineering. So you need an industrial base to build them. Where is the industrial base for the Houthis to have built this? I don't know, because everything in that country is completely ruined. How do they import? Because it's an extremely complicated, it requires the construction or acquiring of several different chips, boards, propulsion, and so on and so forth. And even India has had trouble developing propulsion. So how did this Houthis suddenly develop this propulsion and develop this missile out of the blue that travels almost 700 to 800 kilometers north? Traveling 700 to 800 kilometers north is no joke, and that too hitting with precision. So you look at Hamas and Hezbollah and the rockets that they use from Lebanon. Those go up to about, say, 150, maximum 200 kilometers. Very imprecise, no guidance, no nothing. So there is a lot of reasons for us to suspect that these came from Iran. And of course, the direction and the shoot down of all these drones and missiles actually just proves the fact that they came from Iran. Where's this going from now? Well, I don't think that the Iran-Saudi Arabia thing is going to go very far, because Saudi Arabia is already bogged down in Yemen. It can't do a second front war after having its nose bloodied. And if you remember, that war in Yemen produced a lot of conflict between Saudi Arabia and its ally, the UAE, because of the military incompetence out there. What I'm curious to see is what happens in this case with Israel. What if Hezbollah, because of the Shia Crescent as it's called, gets their hands on these cruise missiles? What are they going to use it for? Because if they get their hands on it and decide to start hitting Israel with it, then you'll see a big blow up.
Well, there are a couple of things that the United States has started doing. They have imposed even more sanctions on Iran. And most importantly, they are sending troops to Saudi Arabia and the UAE, presumably to assist the two countries to combat, or at least to patrol the waters of around the Hormuz Strait and so on and so forth. Now, Could this be also sort of like a deterrent for future missiles being projected from Iran?
I doubt that very much, because Iran will do what it wants to do. You can deter it part-time, but you can't deter it full-time. Because see, Iran's whole game is plausible deniability. They do things either through proxies, mostly through proxies like Hezbollah and so on and so forth, and the militias in Iraq, and the Houthis as well. Though, to be fair, some of them aren't proxies at all. See, because these asymmetric warfare groups seek, they're Shia and they seek help from Iran, and Iran gives it. I won't really call them proxies in that sense, though they do have a common agenda and all of that. But what happens is, let's just game this. What if Saudi Arabia hits Iran tomorrow? There are two elements to defense. One is offense, one is defense. I agree Saudi Arabia can go on the offensive, but what Iran's demonstrated is that Saudi Arabia doesn't have the defensive capability to protect itself from these cruise missiles, right? And that's the most important thing, because what are the Saudis going to do? What can America do in the next 1.5 to 2 years to make Saudi Arabia protected against cruise missiles? Cruise missile defense is not like aircraft defense. Aircraft come from a great height and bomb view, or missiles come from a great height because they follow a ballistic trajectory. Cruise missiles hug the ground. They fly about 200-300 feet over the ground.
So they are basically under the radar.
They're under the radar. There's nothing you can do about them realistically, unless you have a huge fleet of aircraft up in the air all the time, waiting, detecting these missiles coming in, and then shooting them. And then see, if you look at it, look at the background behind me. You can see a leaf very clearly,
right?
Brown leaves against the background of the sky, because there's nothing else in the sky. There's just the leaf there, and you can say hit it directly. When you're looking from above to the ground, a missile has a huge problem discriminating between a missile and the ground below it. What does it pick up? What does it not? Though now you have very sophisticated algorithms. It's not that difficult anymore, but it's a very, very expensive exercise.
Well, these are all happening in real time, which means you have to have extremely high computing power also, isn't it?
Yeah, extremely high computing power, the ability to detect, feed that back into the command system, and then issue the kill order, and so on and so forth.
Right. Corrective. So closer home, there have been some protests in PAK-occupied Kashmir, as well as in Baltistan, and in Kashmir too. So let's start one at a time. Let's start with Kashmir. There have been shop closures. And we are just talking about those 4 districts of Srinagar and others which are prone to violence. The rest seems to be kind of pretty much normal. How do you see the situation there now?
Well, look, stone pelting, save for that big incident in Sora, is almost non-existent right now. What we're hearing, I interviewed all these CRPF, like I'd stop the car every 3-4 kilometers, get out and ask the CRPF picket what they felt, police as well. And the thing was, before, what used to happen was, with WhatsApp and the ability to coordinate, there'd be big crowds that had come out on instruction deliberately and start the pelting. Here, that hasn't happened. What we're seeing now is little kids come and flick stones at cops and run away. Not in an organized way, not in a dangerous way. They're just throwing stones, 3-4 kids, and running away. So you can literally see it. The cops and the CRPF and the BSF in Kashmir, they're actually relaxed. Their body language is completely relaxed. They're not actually worried about a big mob suddenly breaking out. They're still always at 5 p.m., after the evening namaz, when the stone pelting starts again, they're slightly on edge, but there's been no real proper mass incidents of stone pelting except what we saw in Sora. And it's never happened in Sora again after that.
Now, there's some interesting news that is coming from across the border. I was watching this one YouTube channel that is run from Canada that focuses on Pakistani news. And they were saying that just like in 1947, a lot of tribesmen were marching towards the line of control, and these people belong to Pashtun or Northwest Frontier Province and so on and so forth. And there seems to be some, amassing of people who want to cross over and cause trouble at LOC. Do you see the similar signs in POK?
I'm usually very careful of, single shot camera videos kind of thing. But I've been talking to all my friends in Pakistan, and what they're saying is there's a great deal of anger against Imran Khan. There's been an attempt to portray these protests in Pakistan occupied Kashmir as Azadi, but there was a certain nuance to it, which was that they said, we want to go free Indian occupied Kashmir, and if you can't do anything about it, then give us Azadi as well, and we'll go we'll go invade Indian occupied Kashmir, so to say. That said, the military is also flummoxed about what to do. And everything that we're seeing is they're going to make Imran Khan the Balika Bakra out of all of this. He's going to be blamed for the failure, and the boy who could do no wrong, the blue-eyed boy of the army, is now going to be realized that he comes with an expiry date. He thought he was going to be like a can of Coke that would never expire. Sadly, he turned out to be cheese kept out in the open. 2-3 years, started stinking as far as the army goes.
Well, okay, so if not Imran, then who? Because Bajwa cannot clearly not become the president, because the Lugar amendment kicks in, and US will completely stop funding Pakistan. What little trickle that is coming in will stop, and it just goes downhill from there on.
Look, Lugar kicks in. Sometimes we make this mistake of assuming that the Pakistan army really takes America very seriously. They have an extraordinary ability to manipulate American institutions. They count on sanctions lasting for a year or two, and then invariably, because of their leverage that they have in Afghanistan, they feel that they can water down those sanctions. So look what's happening right now. Say Bajwa takes over tomorrow, and in fact, now would be the best time for Bajwa to take over. Assume he takes over tomorrow, Lugar kicks in. The president is allowed to make exemptions under Lugar. So what happens is that if you want a peaceful withdrawal from Afghanistan, they're automatically going to demand that, exemptions start being given. And then the whole point of Lugar is completely lost.
Well, my friend, Afghanistan, there has been some sort of change in direction. Taliban and the Afghan government were supposed to have flown into Camp David to have secret talks with Trump, and he cancelled all that because there was an explosion, and Taliban claimed responsibility, and they said that this was an attempt to gain more leverage at the talks, and Trump said, the heck with that, I'm cancelling the whole thing. Not only that, the US advisor is now on the back foot and probably is on his way out. Bolton is already fired by Trump. So there is a lot of churn going on in the White House vis-a-vis Iran and Afghanistan. So we don't know what Trump is thinking now.
We don't know what Trump is thinking, but remember, there are troops in Afghanistan. Iran, they can't be evacuated through. They can't be evacuated through the northern route. So the only current route available is Pakistan. And Pakistan knows that.
Well, that's true, but I don't think they are going to evacuate the troops anytime soon. Now, I think there is some sort of like a pause and reassess. Most likely, there may be something about this that could get discussed when Narendra Modi comes visiting.
It doesn't matter about the evacuation or not. It's also the supply of the troops.
Yes.
Ultimately, they need food and they need ammunition and all of that. And you can't do that without Pakistan right now. Given the state of America-Russia relations, given the state of America-Iran relations, Pakistan is the only this thing left.
Well, if the US sets its mind, remember how they supplied to Berlin. Okay, so this is 1948, when the technology was perhaps far, far less than what it is today. I mean, if the US sets its mind to it, they might very well be able to airlift supplies to Afghanistan, because now it is incremental. It is not foundational. You don't need to have tanks to go in. At that point, it would have been important to have a land route. I'm just a little skeptical about that. If a US applies its mind to it, they can do it. But what do you see as coming out of Modi Trump talks that could take place either on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly or when Trump and Modi are going to be at Houston?
So apparently, basically, everything is going to revolve around Afghanistan. There'll be some trade as well, but it's mostly Trump's focus right now is on delivering a big campaign promise, which is to get out of these external wars and therefore Afghanistan. And this is where, it's actually counterintuitive that Trump, instead of giving direct concessions to Pakistan, may actually want India to ramp up the pressure on Pakistan so that he says, me just sorting the situation out between the two of you accounts for a huge concession to you. So you better help me get my people out of Pakistan. There could be a lot more. Look, there was the foreign minister's statement a few days back saying they're going to get operational control of Pakistan occupied Kashmir. Now, there are no circumstances under which Pakistan will voluntarily and happily give over that control. Yet, why did he make that statement? Obviously, there's something brewing that we don't know about. It's Afghanistan focused. And there are a lot of things that happen in the Trump White House that people don't know about till much later. I wouldn't be entirely surprised if there's some kind of quid pro quo on Kashmir over Afghanistan. I think that's the main thing we need to look over.
That's very interesting. I mean, do you see there are some people who are saying that within 9 months, India is going to occupy the Pak-occupied Kashmir. We don't know if it will go all the way up to Gilgit-Baltistan, but at least the PoK area up until Muzaffarabad, India might just go and claim that territory. Do you see those signs?
Well, if the government of India is thinking about it, I've got to caution against it because that would be extremely foolhardy. It will involve a massive, massive loss of lives because you're going.
And what do they gain by it, right? What do they gain by it?
Well, you gain territory, but you're going into a extremely difficult situation. Some of the roughest, hardest terrain in the world. In so-called Azad Kashmir, it's heavy foliage, dug-in Pakistani positions. In Gilgit-Baltistan, it's the same lunar landscape you find in Ladakh. And again, it's a mixture of landscapes, but extremely difficult mountains to traverse. The human cost of it is going to be enormous. And think of the political costs of it, of a nuclear power actually physically invading another nuclear power. I don't think it will go down very well. Unless the Americans are promising to do something like providing air cover and support, knock out Pakistani defenses from the air, so on and so forth. Which would be interesting. I mean, I don't think we're ready for that kind of a venture yet. Because, when you get into nuclear stuff, anyway, let's,
okay,
I don't think what's going to happen is actually going to be physical control. I think it's going to be a huge diplomatic thing announcing that we are staking claim to the entire PoK, that it's no longer up for negotiation anymore, no longer the border, because, India's negotiating position is we should define the line of actual control, the line of control as the international border. That will no longer be the case. And, those 24 seats that are reserved for Pakistan occupied MLAs in the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir's Legislative Assembly, they'll announce they're filling it up with Pakistani dissidents and things like that, which would then very decisively shift the balance of power in the new assembly to Jammu's favor rather than Kashmir's favor.
Well, interesting days ahead, isn't it? And thank you very much for sharing your thoughts on this. Abhijit will be back with more such discussions.
Great. Thanks, Sri.